to you, John.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. We have a great session scheduled. I'm going to introduce James Feldman here in a minute. He'll tell us a little bit about himself. So today, some of the things that we're going to cover, we're going to talk about 3D, the concept of 3D thinking. And I know that everyone's familiar with the expression thinking outside the box. Today, we're going to talk about thinking inside the box. So we're going to talk about actionable steps, about ways to build a foundation for decision making. And James is going to share with us today some great stories. I am John Rubito. I'm the Executive VP of TransTech. Our organization has been helping companies here in the Midwest with IT staffing initiatives for the last 30 years. There's my information. You can follow me on Twitter. You can reach out to me via our website. If anybody's looking for some market analysis or what they're seeing in the job market right now, please feel free to reach out to me at any point. Be more than happy to sit down with you. So at this point, James, I'm going to turn it over to you. Give a little brief introduction about yourself, and then we'll get started.
Hi, my name is Jim Feldman. I live in downtown Chicago, and I am the nowist. I help identify what can be done now to discover new opportunities on your journey to bright ideas as we come out and start to tackle the recession revenue rescue plans for everybody. So today, I want you to kind of clear your head and forget about what was and think about what can be. And I'm going to explain 3D thinking. John explained a little bit, but think about the concept of thinking outside the box. If you use the metaphor of being outside the box, you don't know what the problem is because the problem is inside the box. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't come up with the right solution. And so I have worked with hundreds of customers and clients to get them to think differently, which I refer to as how to think, not what to think. Because at the end of the day, all of us are still in the problem solving and the solution providing business. It doesn't matter what you do, what you sell, what you offer. I believe every business can be summed up with, here's an identification of the problem, and we are the solution. I'm hungry, go to the restaurant. I'm thirsty, go to the bar. My car's not working, go to the service station, etc. So if you start to think about the problem first, often the problem solution can be discovered by breaking the problem into components. So let me ask you a question. What if you solved a big problem for your best customer? And what if that big problem solved a problem you're having? And I refer to those as the WIIFM. What's in it for me? Nobody cares about who you are until you show them what you can do for them. And when you start to build trust, people want to do business with you. It comes down to a very simple premise. See a need, fill a need. Look around, see what the needs are that need a solution. And we'll get very specific about that in just a moment. So write this down, put it on a Post-it note. I actually have it glued to the inside of my medicine cabinet. What am I doing differently tomorrow that will get me better results than I got yesterday? That pushes you forward. You cannot live in the past, but you can learn from the past. You can learn from failures. So here's the premise. I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to clear your head and ask yourself, if you were starting from scratch and there were no hindrances, no obstacles, and no limit to your resources. Let me say it again. Starting from scratch with no hindrances, no obstacles, and no limit to your resources, if anything was possible, what would you do differently? And when you start to ask yourself that question, and you throw away those shackles that have bound you to the past, you start to understand how you get clarity in your ability to identify a problem and create a solution. It's about thinking. And I refer to that as how to think inside the box, because we're coming out of a pandemic with a lot of uncertainty. What worked in the past may not work moving forward. What didn't work in the past may be working as we look at the future. So, because I had time on my hands during COVID, I wrote my 13th book. And this was a book that had been put on hold for years. It was Jim's brain dump. What has he told clients? What have he discussed with clients? What were the tools, the tips, and the resources? This is not a whodunit. This is not about fiction. This is about real world solutions. And it's my 13th book. But in this book, I've crammed all of my life's learning lessons to make it simple for you to go in, find a problem's solution by identifying how to think, not what to think. So let me walk you through some of the premises. This is a few of my clients. It's not put up here to impress you. It's put up here to show you the diversity of who I work with. Everybody says, well, you need to understand my business. You know what? Everybody's got the same business. It's got a different label, but it's very simple. I'm providing a product or service, and I'm trying to sell it to a customer. Whether it's a depletable, whether it's a renewable, whether it's something that you consume, use, service, at the end of the day, it is the factory is producing something. It's going through the distribution channel, and the consumer or client is using it. Let me define the difference. A customer is a one-time purchaser. A client is a multiple purchaser customer. So these are clients. In other words, they've come back to me time and time again to sit down and talk about the problems and coming up with solutions. So when I was creating this, people would say, well, how do you think this way? How'd you get this inside the box? And I started looking for a symbol. And I found the pyramids like everybody else. And I said, geez, 100,000 people. It was 2560 BC and it's still standing. Why? Because each side is as strong as the other side. Each side supports the other. There's no weak side to it. And when I looked at those things that support the Great Pyramid idea, you start to see that the pyramid became a good symbol for 3D thinking. And so I created the pyramid. And the first D was define the inside the box problem. So there's my first D. Identify the components that make it up, move the components out of the shadows, and then how far can you take the distance for the what's in it for me with them? And with them to me looked like Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is connectivity. With them is connectivity. So every time you see the Wi-Fi image, start to think about what's in it for me and how reliant you have become on Wi-Fi and how your customers and clients should become reliant upon your intellectual capital. And then you evaluate everything that you can do with it. How do you monetize it? Who's going to pay for it? Because if you've come up with identification of a problem and a solution, and when you look at the marketplace, nobody cares and nobody wants to pay for it, all you got is a hobby. So go back and start all over again. Don't get caught up in what you've done if you can't monetize your intellectual capital. People pay for solutions that solve their problems. And at the end of the day, are you determined to deliver your solution and get paid for it? And here's the most important thing. Solutions are not price sensitive. Everyone says, well, you know, I would buy from you if it was less expensive. Well, you haven't convinced them why you have delivered on their with them. So here it is again. Define, distance, and determination. Those are the 3D thinkings of my pyramid. People pay for solutions, and pricing, while it is of concern, is really not relevant. Need to understand that? Why would anybody buy a Rolex watch if all they wanted to do is tell time? Why would you buy a Mercedes if all you needed was a car? Why would you go to a dentist that doesn't offer Novocaine? Well, but you could save $50. Yeah, but I don't know anybody that goes to a dentist and wants them to drill on their teeth without the Novocaine. So when Dennis said people are complaining about how much it costs, I said, break it down. It's $75 for the filling. Did you want it to hurt? No. Well, it's $75 for the Novocaine. Did you want it to hurt when I gave you the shot? No, it's $25 to numb your gum before the shot, before the Novocaine, so that the filling doesn't hurt. What just happened? While they complained about $150, they were happy to pay $200 because it was a painless solution to their problem. And to all of this, you got to be able to tell a story. If you can't tell a story, nobody cares. Now, there's lots of ways of telling stories. I do a whole workshop on the art of business storytelling, but that's not why we're here today. I just want you to remember, the better the story, the greater your chances of delivering your solution and having somebody want to pay for it. So let me back it up for you. When I was 7 years old, I went to my mother and I said, "Hi, I'd like an allowance." She said, "Go talk to your father." So I went and I found my father and I said, "Hi, I'd like an allowance." He goes, "Go talk to your mother." So at 7 years old, I learned my first business lesson. Get all the decision makers in the room at the same time. So I grabbed my father, took him to where my mother is, and I said, "Hi, I'd like an allowance." And like an a cappella choir, they go, "No. But you can mow the yard. You can walk the dog. You can wash the car. You can open up a lemonade stand." Lemonade stand. Yeah, I like that idea. So I went outside and the streets were lined with people my age with lemonade stands. In fact, some of them were experiences. Some of them sold food along with it. Some of them had places to sit. And I looked at it and I said, how can I compete with them? And I came up with my first business lesson. If you can't be the best at what you do, sell to those people. Sell to those people and let them do what they do. So I went back inside and I thought about, what do these people need? Well, they need the things that make up lemonade. Right. What do you need first? You need the lemonade mix. And that requires sugar. And as I looked at it, I said, gee, if I could buy it in bulk, maybe I could portion it out and put it into a Ziploc bag. And if I put it into a Ziploc bag, then I would know how many cups it made and I could sell them cups. So now I had Mom's lemonade kit. How did that work? At night, I took the lemonade, put it in the bag. I took the sugar, put it in the bag. I took the cups and I knocked on the door. And at the end of the summer, only selling at night when it was cool outside, I had $351 in the bank. And while I don't know for sure, I think I had more money at 7 than most of the kids that were outside competing with their lemonade stands. But it was that idea that has carried me through most of my adult life. Sell things to those that can use it in creating their own business or service. So there you have it. Create the solution by articulating the problem, breaking it into components, and monetizing it. You know, when I priced the lemonade kit, not one person complained because it saved them a trip to the store. It saved them getting in the car. It saved them doing all kinds of things. It was literally home delivery for lemonade kits. So think about what's going on in the world. The world has changed. Big will not beat small. It's the fast. It's the innovative. It's the people that have moved away from business as usual to solutions. And the better your solution, the more people will pay for it. Blow up the ideas you had in the past. Look at the pieces. Look at why it may not have worked before and why it may work now. Now, I was going to law school and we had a study group. And one of the guys in the study group called me and said, "Hey, Feldman, I can't go to the study group. I have to go and adjust a railroad car." I said, "Full of what?" He goes, "I don't know." I said, "I don't understand. What do you mean adjust a railroad car?" He says, "Adjust it." I said, "You have to forgive me. I don't know what that means." He goes, "I'm an insurance adjuster." Oh, I got to go. I got to go with you. So we went, we found the car. We had to get a bolt cutter to open it up. And inside, we found a railroad car full of pasta sauce. And I stared at it and looked at it and started to create innovative ideas. And along that process, standing in the heat, I turned to my friend and I said, "So if a buyer was standing here right now, this minute, what would you sell this to him for?" And he goes, "This second, $5,000. I'll take it." Now, why did I do something so incredibly spontaneous? Because as I looked at it, I said, it's a railroad car full of pasta sauce. I got to make money. I don't know how much is in there, but I'm sure I can at least double my investment. So I was pretty pumped. And I went home and I started thinking about the railroad car and I started to apply 3D thinking. And I wrote it down. Here we have a railroad car filled with spaghetti sauce. And by the way, they were number 10 cans, which is restaurant size. Well, how many do I have? I don't know. Well, I knew the car was 60 feet long because we measured it. I knew that it was a high roof or a 20-foot high because we measured it. I knew it is 4.8 inches wide because every railroad car has the same gauge, which is so they can go on railroad tracks, which are standardized. So as I did my homework, I figured out that it held about 100 tons. I figured out that there was 128 ounces to the gallon. Each can held 107 ounces. Each can, because of what they weighed, was about 6 pounds. And I came up with a ballpark number. Accurate? Hey, the other choice was empty them out and count them, and I wasn't about to do that. So I come up with 33,000 gallons of pasta sauce. Now I know what you're thinking. We thought he was stupid before. He's insane. Where did he get the $5,000? Well, I jumped over that, but here it comes. I didn't have $5,000. I went to the bank. I said, "I'd like to borrow $5,000. They go, "For what?" I said, "A railroad car filled with pasta sauce." I said, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. What are you going to do with it?" I said, "I'm going to sell it." To who? I don't know. Well, why would we give you the money? Because I'm going to pay you back. We're not so convinced, but if you want it that badly, bring us all your camera equipment, because at the time, as I was going to law school, I made my money as a photographer. So I probably had $15,000, $20,000 worth of camera equipment. I brought it all, put it in the vault. They gave me the money. I bought the car. I'm home high-fiving myself. I now own a railroad car filled with pasta sauce. So on Thursday, I paid $5,000 and I went home to think about what's next. Friday morning, the phone rings. "Mr. Feldman, hi. Tim Schmidt, adjacent Topeka and Santa Fe Railroad. Hi. Did you buy a railroad car MDW 1967? Yeah. Move it." What? Move it. What do you mean move it? He says, "What don't you understand? Move it. You can't leave it sitting here." Well, where am I going to move it? Not my problem. How am I going to move it? Not my problem. He says, "Wait a second. You've not done this before." I said, "No." He says, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a law student." Oh my God. He says, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." I said, "Have you been talking to my bank?" He says, "Listen, today's Friday. I'm off for the weekend. I got a couple of days I'm taking off Monday and Tuesday. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. Figure it out. Good luck. Have a nice weekend. Goodbye. Now I'm not thinking I was so smart. But I realized that I had a lot of smart people in my study group. These were law students. They were smart enough to get into law school. So the focus group on Saturday, I said, how am I going to get everybody to help me? I'll buy some beer, I'll buy some pizza, and we'll play the what if game. Hey guys, before we start studying, what if we did the following? What do you mean? Well, let's apply my stuff. What does that mean? Let's apply 3D thinking. And I showed them depth, distance, and determination. But because I was going to a study group, I said, I'll write it down for them. Here's the steps. Define the problem. Gather the information. Create alternatives. Evaluate the alternatives and choose to implement our solution. Depth, distance, and determination. This is what I call 3D thinking. And they got it. They got it. They were bright people. So we sat and we started thinking about it. We started making lists. Military, great idea. Military could use 33,000 gallons of pasta sauce. Who else? Universities, terrific. Hospitals, marvelous. Prisons, you got me. Distributors, they would take it, break it up, and sell it to smaller restaurant chains. I'm pumped. Monday morning, I'm on the phone. I get a hold of the military. We had other people, but this was my focus. Military, universities, hospitals, prisons, distributors. Immediately, the guy says to me, what's the expiration code? I don't know. Well, son, I can't buy it if I don't know the expiration code. Back in the car, back to the switching yard, go find my railroad card, dig through it, get the expiration code, come back, call the military, give him the expiration code. He says, tell you what, I'll give you $2 a gallon. How many gallons you got? 33,000. How'd you come up with it? I explained it to him. He goes, fair enough. May not be totally accurate, but frankly, I think I'll get more than 33,000. Okay. Do we have a deal at 66,000? Remember, I paid 5. I'm just jumping for joy here. He says, but I need a GSA number. What's that? Well, it's called a government supply number, government surface number. You get it from the government. Do you have one? No. Well, then you'll have to get one. Okay, how do I get one? Well, I'll mail you the application. You fill out the application. You mail it to Washington. Washington will mail it back to you in a couple of weeks, and we're good to go. I said, you don't understand. I need to move this railroad car in a couple of days. He says, I can't buy anything without a GSA number. Okay, back to the drawing board. I go to the hospitals. They want a GSA number. I go to the universities. They want a GSA number. I go to the prisons. They want a GSA number. And the distributors never call me back. Now I'm sitting there on Monday, getting a little panicked. Monday night, I'm writing down all of my alternatives. And I said, if I can't sell it to where it's going, maybe I can sell it back to where it came from. I'm going to get a hold of the manufacturer. So Tuesday, I do my homework and I find the manufacturers, American Home Family Products. They own Chef Boyardee. I figure out how to get to the product manager's desk and I get the hold of the receptionist for the product manager. And she says, he won't be back. He's in a sales meeting. This is the end of our quarter. And I don't think he'll be back till like 3 or 4 o'clock. He's the manufacturer. I really have no other choice. I got this young lady on the phone and I said, so have you been there a long time? She goes, no, I'm a temp. Today's my first day. Maybe you could help me out. She goes, what can I do for you? I said, I'm working on a project where I'm trying to come up with the manufactured costs of a commodity, say, pasta sauce, and what it costs to make. She goes, I can't help you. I said, well, somebody there would probably know. She goes, well, wait a second. There's a report sitting on my desk that I'm supposed to give to the sales guy. Let me just thumb through it and see if there's anything there. She's thumbing through and she goes, Looks like it's $3 to make it. Yes, I have $99,000 worth of pasta sauce. I paid $5,000 for it. Now I know that if it costs them $3 to make it, more than likely, if he's interested, he's going to offer me 50% discount. Why? Because that's what most business people do. So sure enough, he gets on the phone. I explain what I've got. I give him the number and he says, tell you what, I give you $1.50. So that's $49.5. Take away my $5 to the bank is $44.5. I looked at it and said, I had $66,000 from the military. Yeah, but remember, they couldn't buy it. Yeah, but in my head, I'd already collected $66,000. Why do I want to discount it to $44.5? Because Jim, you're being greedy. No, he wants it. I'm going to sell it. There's probably a middle ground. So I looked at the 5,000 and I said, gee, if I bump it 15 cents, I cover my bank. So I said, no. The guy was shocked. He said, why not? I said, I need a little bit more. He said, what do you want? I said, well, thinking through my 5 steps, evaluate, choose, and implement, I said, you've offered me $1.50. I'd really like $1.65. Now, most business people are not going to walk away for 15 cents. Now, I've netted $49,450, but I still haven't reached my $66,000. Now, most of you would say, hey, Jim, take it and walk away. And I'm going to say, nah, I got to figure this out. And I'm doing what you're doing right now. I'm staring at a picture of the railroad car. And it hits me. The railroad car, boxcar, has got value. What's the value of a boxcar? Well, I don't buy and sell boxcars, and most of you on this call don't either. But as it works out, a boxcar today is about 135,000 plus. And in 67, when I did this, it was probably 75,000. So I said to him, what do you give me for the boxcar? And he goes, listen, I don't want to negotiate a lot. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you $30,000. Now I did the math. Add 30 to what he was offering me. I'm grossing $84,450. Woohoo! We made a deal. He wired the money to the bank. The bank didn't charge me anything for the loan because they hadn't even processed the paperwork. Remember, I borrowed it on Friday. I paid it back on Wednesday. They didn't know what to do, so it was free. But here's the important lesson. I paid the bank, leaving me $79,450. I looked at my 5 steps and said, what am I missing? What am I missing? I'm missing the opportunity to replicate this and do it again. So I called the adjuster and I said, I want to thank you for what you've done. I'm going to give you $5,000. He goes, why? I said, because the next time you adjust a railroad car, I want you to call me. Now think about it. Do you think he's going to call somebody else when I'm the guy that just gave him $5,000? Probably not. But I also needed the guy from the railroad. So on Wednesday, I called him and I said, I'm going to give you $5,000. Why? Because I may be buying more railroad cars in the future and I may need your help in the future. And I want it to be worth your while. The guy was ecstatic. Now, there were 2 messages here for him. A, if my adjuster found another railroad car, but as importantly, if other adjusters found a railroad car. Remember, he's with the railroad. He's not locked into just one insurance adjuster. And as it worked out, in that year, I ended up buying 12 more railroad cars. Now look at that. What I did is I said, don't prevent me from thinking differently. And the lesson to you is don't let what you think you know prevent you from learning what you need to do. We all come in with biases. And the bias has to be pushed aside. Why would I give back $10,000? Because, ladies and gentlemen, that $10,000 was a drop in the bucket for what I made. Remember, if the guy from the railroad finds an adjuster, I don't have to pay that adjuster anything if I don't want to. He was just doing his job. We don't have a relationship. So I would pay the railroad guy his $5, and maybe to that adjuster, I'd give him $1,000 or $1,500 just to keep him motivated to call me again. As you do this, start to create your own SWOT analysis. Most of you have seen this before, but it stands for what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your opportunities, and what are your threats? Remember how I applied it to the lemonade stand. Remember how I'm applying it to the railroad car. SWOT analysis is something you should do all the time. I do mine every 90 days because we're in an environment that changes so quickly. And once you've done your SWOT, then you create your SMART. This is your plan of attack. It's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's time sensitive. So I put this together for you, and they've uploaded it into your chat box. This is the SWOT and the SMART combined. The SWOT is on the right and the left. The SMART is in the middle. But look at the definitions. Are you specific? Have you figured out a way to measure the WIIFM? Is it actionable? Is it replicatable? Is it realistic? Is it time-bound? And time-bound takes me back to the railroad car. I bought it on Thursday. I had to have an answer by Wednesday. That's less than a week. Put your own self-implied time constraints or you won't do it. If you start to look at these kinds of answers and questions, you come up with what I refer to and everybody else referred to as your unique selling proposition. And as I said before, it's not about price. You put yourself in your customer's shoes, you know what motivates your customer, and you uncover the real reason your customer is buying from you instead of a competitor. And I will say it again and again and again and again. It's not about price. It's about trust. I go to the dentist that doesn't hurt me. Period. If he's a little more, I know from history he doesn't hurt me. I'm willing to pay for it. I go to the same pizza place because they put a little extra topping on it. We all have our reasons. Find them. And often you can just ask, what is it going to take? Why are you talking to me? And if I solve that problem, what are you willing to pay for it? Let them start with the price. Because the growth for all of us coming out of the pandemic is how you have effectively leveraged and improved upon what you did pre-pandemic. The level field has been taken down. Nobody came out of this unscathed. Some people made a lot of money. Zoom is an example, plexiglass people, mask people. What are they going to do as we move out of the pandemic? Same thing happens when you start to look at your own business model. Are you taking a look at yourself? Have you addressed your self-care? Have you gotten lazy in your time and your dress because you are working from home? Remember, you're going to go back to work. You've got to get back into the work mode. Have you engaged your curiosity? Are you communicating with others? Are you focusing on what you want and at the same time focusing on what they want? During these last 15, 16 months, have you become dull and boring? Are you working on how to think differently? Are you looking at what can be instead of what is? And are you following up? And lastly, to every question, to everybody, are you the solution to the problem? See a need, fill a need. Now, it's time for a change. It's time for your success or your excuse. And I can help you. When I wrote this book, I crammed it with 295 pages, 100 resources, infographics, and it comes with 45 minutes of one-on-one coaching. And if that's not worth 50 bucks, then I don't deserve to be paid anything. But because you're on Trans-Text call today, I've cut the price. Why? Because when you're buying a book, sometimes price matters. And if I make the value so strong, I think you'll buy the book. And if you're not willing to invest $16, then you're going to continue to do what you've always done, and you're always going to get what you always got. If you follow that link to Amazon, the price has been dropped to $16. They will ship it to you, and you will also get the free coaching. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for 3D thinking. You need to go inside the box, because that's where the problem is. That's where the solution lies. And it's all contained in this book. Time for questions.
Awesome, James. Thank you. Mike, what do you got for us?
Yeah, we had several questions, so I'm going to try to get to them in the order that they were sent over. But one of the questions that stuck out to me the most is, what is the most common mistake that leadership makes when they're trying to communicate to their prospective clients?
They don't engage them. They don't tell them, they try to sell them. Remember, you didn't know me when we started this, but I think it's fair to say you've got a good idea that I'm creative, I'm resourceful, I don't give up. And you may say, you know, this is somebody I want to talk to. If on the other hand, I started with trying to sell you a $50 book, you'd say, who wants a $50 book? Now, at the $50 becoming $16, you got a price value relationship. I may have garnered a little bit of trust. And so as a leader, you want two things to happen. Number one, you want your employees engaged. You want them to think like entrepreneurs. And number two, you want your customer to become a client, not a one-time purchaser. And in doing that, you've got to build trust. And if you start to build trust, price becomes irrelevant.
That's actually the perfect segue into one of the questions that we had is, how do you build trust without a record of success? So if they don't have a great resource like a book that they've written, or they don't have maybe the client list that you have, how do you start building that trust?
The way I got my first client was Toyota. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that said Toyota was being restricted with the number of cars they could bring in the United States at the time. So I wrote them a letter and I said, your dealers are not going to be very happy. So let's put together a promotion focusing on the parts department. Because if people can't buy new cars, they're going to repair their old cars. And I got a phone call from the guy going, how'd you come up with that? And I said, I just pivoted. I looked at what the dealer had in his arsenal. He has new cars, used cars, parts, and service. If we focus on parts, it helps service. If we're servicing cars, it builds up used cars. So in answer to your question, give away some of your best ideas. Show people the value that you bring to the table first. Then you start to establish the relationship. When people call me and say, we want to hire you, but we can only pay you $1.50, I go, is that all the solution is worth? Oh, no, no, no. The solution is a multi-million-dollar solution. Well, then why would you think that my solution to your problem is only worth $1? I'll tell you what, I'm not going to charge you anything. I'll share in the success. What do you mean? Well, right now you've got a $60 million problem, correct? Yes. And if we solve the $60 million, I should get a percentage. Well, what percentage do you want? 10%. Jim, we're never going to pay you $6 million. Yeah, but you're going to keep $54 million. We'll get back to you.
The next question in here is, which stage of your strategy do you find is the key to unlocking the other pieces? So I'm guessing that means something like through the various stages that you have of evaluate and looking, which stage do you find is the key to success?
The first thing is to identify and define the problem. It's the basis of everything. If you have not clearly defined the problem, it takes you off in the wrong directions. It's the time where you should spend 90% of your time. So as an example, with the railroad car, the guy's got a railroad car he's got to get rid of. To whom? He doesn't know. It's 100+ degrees outside. He's not willing to stand out there for very long, but I kept him there. And I recognized that the more he was sweating, the more competitive he would be on his liquidation. And when I threw out, what would you take for it? He came back, sort of a knee-jerk reaction, $5,000. Quite frankly, at that moment, I wasn't focused on the contents. I was focused on the boxcar. I kept saying to myself, this guy's going to sell me a boxcar for $5,000. I don't know what boxcars cost, but I know I can sell it to somebody for 10. And if I got to throw away the contents, who cares? So while I was focused on the boxcar and not the contents while I was standing there, once I owned it, then I flipped it because I saw that I had 33,000 gallons, and I reversed my whole thought and then used the boxcar as the add-on.
How do you balance risk taking versus being slow with the solution is the one question. So how do you dive in aggressively without being overly aggressive?
You mean stupid?
That's probably a better way to play.
Listen, I'm the first one to tell you that I've had some massive failures, that I had a vision that nobody else had. But when I was doing business in the pork belly pits, the guy in the pork belly pits said to me, you can be wrong 7 out of 10 times and still make a lot of money. And I've always used that as the basis, that you're gonna fail. There's no two ways about it. But you've got to build on that failure to create more success. I can tell you that I have failed at things, pushed them off into the warehouse, and a year later or 2 years later, turned around and sold them for 2 or 3 times more than I would have, because suddenly there was a need. Suddenly it was a solution for the problem. So unfortunately for many, I don't throw away those bad ideas. I just categorize them and save them for the next time I may be able to bring them back, recirculate them, refocus, repurpose, and learn from them.
One of the questions is, how does 3D thinking apply to middle management? I guess we have a lot of folks that we work with that are in that not quite C-suite level, but they are responsible for a variety of people.
Every single job, no matter where you are, can use 3D thinking. Every single person can see something that upper management doesn't see. I was working with somebody in a restaurant, and I said, what's the best thing in the restaurant? He goes, the pasta sauce. And I said, do you sell the pasta sauce for takeout? He goes, no. I said, why not? He goes, they just don't. I said, you just told me the best thing in the restaurant is your pasta sauce, but you're not offering it in takeout. He goes, well, I'm just a head waiter. I said, well, go back and suggest it. He called me the next day. He goes, my manager loved that idea. He says, so we went out and we got some Chinese takeout containers. And I said, think about your packaging. I'm putting Italian pasta in a Chinese takeout box. What's wrong with this picture? And we both started laughing. He goes, I never thought about that. I said, well, that's where the detail comes in. If it's Italian pasta, you don't put it in a Chinese takeout box. They now sell their pasta sauce to about 1 out of 3 customers. And they make more on the pasta sauce than typically their entrees.
That's excellent. I think that's all the questions that we had from the audience. I wasn't sure if you have a couple more minutes to sit with us, but this has been, for at least me, very eye-opening. It's been an interesting story, and we appreciate you sharing it with our audience. It's been fantastic.
So you've got to remember, guys, that 3D thinking is not the popular way to do things. You've got to be prepared to defend it. You've got to be prepared to say, I've gone inside the box. I have identified the problem. I've identified the things that make up the problem, and I've reordered them. So here's the solution to 95% of the problems. Simple math: multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Look at the components and see what can be removed, see what can be reduced, see what can be added to, and you will often see how those solutions come about. I'll give you a quick example. I got involved in a winery. We were shipping out a case of wine. One bottle of wine was getting broken almost every time. We started looking at better packaging. The problem with the better packaging was the packaging was more money and the freight was more money. By the time we added those two things up, it was also slower in terms of filling the carton. So I said, stop all of it. We have a simple solution. Go onto the website and change the price from 12 bottles to 11 bottles. We didn't change anything, but we said each box contains 11 bottles, same price. Now, if one of them arrived broken, you got exactly what we promised. If one of them arrived without being broken, you got a bonus bottle. The complaints went down about 90%. And all we did was pivot by looking at what was going to be the most economical, most expeditious solution to the problem. And that was going from 12 in a case to 11 in a case. I can tell you 3D thinking can be applied in almost everything you do every single day. The question is whether you're willing to take the time to do it.
Thank you so much, James, for spending time with us. I highly encourage you to connect with James on LinkedIn, on Twitter. His contact information is there as well. I don't know what else to say except for thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll turn it over to you, John.
Any
All
other
right.
questions come in, guys?
Nothing so far, but we will be sending a feedback survey. I'm sure that there'll be some more questions coming in there. We'll also, in about a week's time, have the link up for everyone to use. But we'll send a special link along with that, with your offer as well, James, to the attendees.
And I put all of my contact information in the chat box.
Yep,
Perfect.
and we'll be sure to put that in an email by the end of the day to all attendees.
Great. Well, thank you very much, James. I encourage everybody to take advantage of his book offering and also connect with James on LinkedIn. So thank you very much. We appreciate everybody joining today. Enjoy the rest of your day.